Here it is, the Gilded Age dream house that no one survived, the Lockwood Matthews Mansion. It is a palace built not just of granite and oak, but of an ambition so heavy it crushed the man who conceived it. You see the shine of the marble, the sweep of the music halls, and the paintings meant to grant immortality. But beneath the polished floors lies a different story. It is a story of debts, of broken alliances, and of a price no one likes to name. This house seems to attract loss. As the staircase gleams, the family line collapses. Everyone who believed they could hide here from the world suddenly vanishes from the map. The tour guides will tell you about the beauty. We will show you the bill. Why did a house built to make its owners eternal outlive them all? Chapter 1. A monument in the time of war. To understand the house, you must understand the moment it was born. In 1864, the United States was tearing itself apart. The Civil War was at its bloody height. Yet, in Norwalk, Connecticut, one man chose to build something that would deny the chaos. LeGrand Lockwood had made his fortune in banking and railroads, navigating the treacherous waters of the 1857 panic and wartime speculation. By the age of 42, he held the kind of wealth that demanded architectural proof. He did not want a home. He wanted a declaration. He chose a rise in Elm Park, visible from the Boston Post Road. 50 acres of land that announced his arrival before a single stone was laid. This estate was not designed to hide wealth. It was designed to make wealth unavoidable. To execute this vision, Lockwood hired Detlef Lienau, an architect who brought European training to American soil. Lienau understood the assignment perfectly. Lockwood did not want mere comfort. He wanted scale. He wanted permanence. He wanted a building that would serve as its own evidence of power. The drawings Lienau produced were extraordinary. The plans called for roughly 44,000 square feet divided into 62 rooms. The style was Second Empire, capped with a towering mansard roof meant to command the skyline. It was the language of French imperialism transplanted to Connecticut, a signal that American capital could purchase European legitimacy and then enlarge it. By early 1864, construction began. The foundation alone consumed months of labor. Massive blocks of Connecticut granite were cut and seated with a precision that presumed the house would stand for centuries. These walls were load-bearing masonry, thick and disciplined, built to resist time as much as the New England weather. The roster of contractors read like a census of international skill. Stonecutters from Italy, plasterers from France, woodworkers from Germany. Lockwood was not assembling a local crew for a local job. He was building an international workshop. The budget was substantial before the first wall rose, estimated at $1.5 million, roughly $30 million in today's currency. But for Lockwood, the number was not a limit. It was merely the cost of immortality. Chapter 2. The Stone and the Scale. By late 1864, the outline of the mansion was visible from the road. The granite courses were stacked with mathematical certainty, broadcasting a scale the town of Norwalk had never seen. Crews arrived each morning in numbers that required dedicated housing. Rail cars delivered materials in a steady, industrial rhythm. Marble arrived from Italy. Hardwoods were shipped from South America. Fine hardware came from the best foundries in New York. Lienau's timeline was audacious. He planned for 4 years from groundbreaking to completion. 4 years to raise 62 rooms, install forward-looking mechanical systems, and finish every surface to museum standards. It was a schedule that assumed a perfect world. No financial panics, no embargoes, no shortages to interrupt the momentum. It assumed the world would hold still while the house climbed. Standing in the mud in 1864, watching the first courses set, LeGrand Lockwood had every reason to believe the world would cooperate. His banking house was solid. His railroad positions were profitable. The war would eventually end, and the economy would surge. This mansion would stand as the permanent proof of what he had achieved. But permanence has an opponent. What happens when a house designed for centuries belongs to a man with only years left? When the stone defies time, but the patron cannot. In that first year, with the granite rising and the contracts moving, such questions felt abstract. The house was possible, therefore it would be built. And for 4 years, it was. The structure rose, imposing and absolute, unaware that the clock was already ticking for the man paying the bills. Chapter 3. The machine in the walls. Height was only half the challenge. What set Lockwood's vision apart from simple architectural ambition was the invisible network of engineering hidden behind the walls. This was 1864. Most American homes still relied on wells, outhouses, and drafty fireplaces. Lockwood was building something entirely different. He was building a machine wrapped in marble. The mechanical systems specified in the drawings were extraordinary. They represented the sharp edge of proven technology, the sort of engineering one would expect in the grand hotels of Paris or London, now fitted into a private house. It began with water. The mansion required its own hydraulic backbone, a dedicated water tower on the grounds, fed by deep wells, provided the pressure to push running water to every floor. Not just cold water, but hot and cold delivered to purpose-built bathrooms. Estimates indicate that roughly 30 to 40 rooms had some form of plumbing access. The heating system matched that ambition. While his peers huddled near coal stoves, Lockwood installed a comprehensive hot water radiator network. A massive coal-fired boiler in the basement generated heat that moved through cast-iron radiators in virtually every principal room, pipes threaded through walls and beneath floors. Unseen but essential. The engineering problem was immense. How to maintain even heat across 62 rooms with high ceilings and broad windows during a Connecticut winter. Then came the ventilation. Leonau planned a web of air channels running through the structure, fresh air intakes, discrete exhausts, and internal passages that promoted circulation. It was a respiratory system for the house. And finally, the gas lighting. The estate included its own gas-making plant, producing fuel from coal. From there, a network of lines fed hundreds of fixtures, chandeliers in the public rooms, wall sconces in the corridors, reading lamps in the bedrooms. By the time of completion, miles of pipe ran inside the walls. It was a circulatory system delivering light rather than blood. This was not just a mansion. It was a technological triumph, offering a level of comfort that most Americans would not see for another 50 years. Chapter 4. A soul of art and velvet. By 1867, the machine was alive. Pipes held pressure. Radiators gave steady heat. Gaslight filled the rooms. But a functioning house was not enough. For men like LeGrand Lockwood, mechanical perfection was only the foundation. What lifted a mansion from impressive to important was what hung on the walls. Art was not decoration. Art was proof. Lockwood understood that the right canvas in the right room could shift social standing more effectively than any bank balance. As the mansion neared completion, he began filling it with objects that made the architecture feel almost secondary. The centerpiece arrived in 1867. It was Albert Bierstadt's Domes of the Yosemite. This was not a picture to tuck over a parlor sofa. It was a monumental canvas, roughly 9.5 feet tall by 15 feet wide, rendering the California wilderness with a romantic scale that made Bierstadt the most expensive American painter of his generation. The commission cost Lockwood roughly $25,000, more than $500,000 in today's terms. Its installation demanded architectural accommodation. The octagonal rotunda was designed specifically to bear works of this magnitude. The painting was positioned where no arrival could miss it, dominating the volume with sheer physical presence. But the Bierstadt was only the beginning. Lockwood turned to the finest decorative arts houses in New York. The Herder brothers and Leon Marcotte supplied furniture that blurred the line between function and art. Herder brothers specialized in learned design, creating pieces that alluded to Renaissance Italy yet remained distinctly American. Marcotte brought European authority. Surviving invoices show a methodical acquisition program, complete ensembles for entire rooms, suites of chairs and tables, parlors furnished to exact floor plan dimensions. Every surface, from the dado to the cornice, received exacting attention. silk damask for the formal reception rooms, velvet for the winter draperies, carpets woven to room measurements. The public rooms became galleries in their own right. Visitors were meant to feel they had entered an institution, not merely a home. By 1868, the metamorphosis was complete. The machine had become a monument, and the monument had become a museum. Chapter 5: Black Friday and the Unraveling. For one brief year, everything LeGrand Lockwood imagined existed exactly as intended. The Bierstadt ruled its rotunda. The systems hummed. The Herder Brothers ensembles held their perfect lines. Then came September 24th, 1869, Black Friday. The panic began in New York and radiated outward at telegraphic speed. Gold collapsed. Stocks evaporated. Banks that looked solid at breakfast were insolvent by dinner. The very mechanisms that had minted Gilded Age fortunes revealed how fragile their power really was. LeGrand Lockwood watched fissures spread through his world. His banking house carried exposure across railroads and speculative ventures. That looked brilliant during expansion and catastrophic during contraction. Lockwood's name did not appear in the headlines of the initial collapse. He was too established for immediate ruin. But the damage landed anyway. Debts that felt manageable with swelling assets became crushing as valuations shrank. Loans were called. Credit lines froze. The machine that had built the mansion now demanded cash repayment in a market with no liquidity. Elm Park turned into a different kind of monument, proof of timing's cruelty. Every marble column represented capital needed elsewhere. That $25,000 Bierstadt now read as a bill coming due. Lockwood began to sell, quietly, selectively. Furniture moved back into the market. Smaller canvases disappeared. Each transaction was a small defeat dressed up as portfolio management. Through 1870 and 1871, the pressure rose. Inside the house, life continued with diminishing grandeur. Fewer servants, fewer guests. Rooms designed for crowds stood quiet. The machine ran, but on a lower setting. And then, in the middle of this slow-motion catastrophe, something faster arrived. LeGrand Lockwood ran out of time entirely. He died in 1872, 7 years after breaking ground, 4 years after moving in, and 3 years after watching his fortune begin to evaporate. He was 49. The mansion he intended to outlast centuries had, under his hand, barely survived a single presidential term. A house designed for arrival became the setting for departure. Chapter 6: The Foreclosure and the Savior. Lockwood's widow, Rebecca, inherited the architectural monument and the financial wreck at once. The house came with debts accelerating faster than the remaining assets could cover. The building itself was priceless and unsellable. Monthly costs were crushing. Coal for heat, wages for staff, taxes on 50 acres. The mansion consumed resources like a furnace. Rebecca faced an equation without a solution. Selling enough to cover operations meant selling the assets that justified keeping the house. By 1874, the math reached its end. The notice arrived in careful legal phrasing: foreclosure. It was the end of years of negotiation. Rebecca Lockwood had done everything possible to delay this hour, but courtesy cannot outrun accounting forever. The sheriff came on a cold morning. No spectacle, no cruelty, just documents that required signatures. Rebecca signed. Refusal would only make the process louder. By January 1875, the transfer was complete. The Lockwood name was removed from the record. The mansion at Elm Park would be sold to satisfy creditors. And then, something remarkable happened. The new owners did not demolish. They did not subdivide. They moved in. The Matthews family arrived in 1876. Charles D. Matthews was a financier wealthy enough to acquire what Lockwood could no longer hold. But the surprise was not the purchase. It was his restraint. He changed almost nothing. The Bierstadt remained in the rotunda. The library retained its books. The gas brackets lit the same rooms. Matthews recognized what he had bought: a complete artistic argument. Pulling pieces out would blunt the whole. This was preservation before the word was fashionable. The Matthews family lived with Lockwood's ghost without letting it dictate every choice. They maintained the house with a fidelity that required both money and discipline. Photographs from the Matthews years show striking continuity. Furniture sits where earlier images place it. Paintings hang on the same walls. The mansion persisted, maintained, and inhabited, functioning exactly as conceived 4 decades earlier. Chapter 7. The Slow Siege of the 20th Century. The 20th century arrived with problems no blueprint could solve. A mansion that was astonishing in 1868 was now simply old. Its systems still worked, but the economics of sustaining 44,000 square feet were shifting. Property taxes rose steadily and relentlessly. Norwalk grew. Land values climbed. And assessments treated scale as the ability to pay. Labor costs traced the same curve. The servant economy was collapsing. Domestic workers found jobs in factories and offices. The house required a substantial staff simply to function. 62 rooms to clean, a heating plant to run. Operations were outpacing income. So, the Matthews family began closing wings. Winter after winter. Sections went cold. Radiators were shut off. Dust covers draped the furniture. It was economic triage. Closing zones saved fuel, but it meant living inside a fraction of the house. By the 1920s, the automobile rewrote the map. 50 acres were no longer rural. They were suburban. Neighbors sold. Estates split, and parcels sprouted streets. The mansion's acreage became the last large, undeveloped tract in a tightening grid. Developers knocked. The family could cash out and move, but the Matthews family held on. Selling felt like surrender. By the 1930s, the Depression deepened the slide. A household that once employed dozens dwindled to a handful. Maintenance became selective. Only the catastrophic failures were addressed. The roof, the boiler, everything else slipped. Paint dulled, plaster cracked, gilding tarnished. By the 1950s, the situation turned acute. The family still owned the property, but ownership had become a liability. Chapter 8. The Fight for the Land. Then came the 1960s, and a threat that was not financial, but existential. Norwalk's planners arrived with maps and proposals. They had a vision for urban renewal. They wanted the land. The mansion sat on prime real estate that could hold offices, parking, or civic facilities. The city had tools the Matthews family did not. Eminent domain, the legal authority to take property for public use. The proposals framed demolition as inevitable progress. The unstated message was plain. The mansion was obsolete. It consumed land while delivering little public benefit. Public hearings turned into battlegrounds. The Matthews family realized they were resisting an attitude as much as a blueprint. On the renderings, the mansion simply vanished, replaced by modern blocks. Opposition formed slowly. Historical societies took notice. Architecture professors wrote letters. The debate was fierce. Preservationists argued for significance. Opponents argued for economics. By 1966, the pressure peaked. The Matthews family faced a hard choice: find a way to save the building, or watch it fall. Conventional options were spent. Then, someone proposed a radical idea. What if the mansion became a museum? Not sold to a museum, but becoming its own institution. In 1966, the Lockwood Matthews Mansion Museum was incorporated as a nonprofit. The family donated the property. The nonprofit accepted the title and every obligation that came with it. It was an elegant solution on paper. In practice, they had a deteriorating mansion and no money. Year 1 was survival. Volunteers hauled out debris. The roof got emergency patches, but the model worked. The house had saved itself by becoming something worth saving. Chapter 9. Saved by the screen. Survival is not sustainability. The building still consumed more than admissions could supply. The maintenance backlog was immense. The museum needed a revenue stream that could generate real money without massive upfront spending. It turned out, Hollywood was willing to pay for what the museum already had. The film crews arrived in the late 1970s. Location scouts realized the mansion was a time machine. The interiors the Matthews family had preserved were perfect period settings. The first production paid a modest fee, but it was enough to repair a plaster ceiling. More productions followed. The Stepford Wives in 1975. Ragtime. In 1981, each project brought income that went straight into preservation. A production might pay $10,000 for 2 days on site. That money funded months of restoration by local craftsmen. The mansion earned money simply by existing. Through the 80s and 90s, television returned again and again. The rotunda became a frequent setup. The grand stair appeared in multiple productions. The revenue grew predictable enough to plan around. The irony was complete. LeGrand Lockwood built the mansion to make himself immortal through architecture. He failed, but the building achieved a different kind of immortality, appearing on screens worldwide, familiar to millions who would never set foot in Norwalk. The location fees funded the work deferred for decades. Gilding was restored. Wallpapers were conserved. Meticulous, expensive work paid for largely by filmmakers who needed true Gilded Age interiors. By 2020, the mansion had appeared in dozens of productions, but visibility could not solve the invisible problems. Chapter 10. The Resurrection. The systems that made the house livable were failing after 150 years. Pipes, heat, electrical, all were overdue for replacement. In 2023, the museum made a bold choice. They closed the doors. They launched a capital campaign with a number that sounded impossible: $18 million. This was not for showy finishes. It was for the invisible systems that would decide whether the mansion could survive another century. New HVAC to supplant the original heating plant. Fire suppression through all 62 rooms. Modern electrical systems robust enough for a museum yet invisible in period spaces. Work moved through 2024. Walls were opened surgically. Floors were lifted. Every step was documented. Sensors for temperature and humidity went in, protecting the Bierstadt and the interiors with precise control. Energy efficiency became part of preservation. LED lighting evoked the warmth of gas without the expense. Accessibility shifted from compromise to integration. An elevator was added. Ramps were absorbed into the landscape. The mansion would finally welcome everyone. Reopening was set for June of 2025. When those doors open, visitors will walk through rooms LeGrand Lockwood conceived, beneath the painting he commissioned, through spaces the Matthews family preserved, into a building volunteers rescued, Hollywood funded, and $18 million just rendered viable for another century. The mansion that no one survived has at last survived everyone. And looking at the gleaming granite, we are reminded of an essential truth. Architecture is not immortal on its own. It cannot fight gravity or bankruptcy or time. It only survives when a community decides that memory matters more than money. If this story of ruin and resurrection resonated with you, if you want to see more investigations into the houses that history tried to erase, please like this video. Subscribe so you don't miss the next documentary. And tell me in the comments, is there a building in your city that needs this kind of savior? I read every story you share. Thank you for watching until the end. How did you feel about this video? Let us know in the comments below. Empire Legacies truly appreciates your support. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.